Hello, Faris. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey Jens, I'm very good, and even better now I'm on the Human Innovation, the Jens Heitland podcast.
And we managed to get the audio working without echo. It took us half an hour.
It took us about half an hour, and people should have watched that. That should have been the ultimate podcast.
Yeah.
Two idiots trying to work out an audio setting on a podcast.
Yeah. And one of them is an electrical engineer, even worse.
I always say those should be like the job interviews, not or the assessment centers where you do something, you create a fake activity to see how people handle it under pressure. And that's their real character. And that's the kind of person you might end up working with.
I would love that.
Yeah.
That's maybe one of the few I wouldn't fail. I still remember my first ever assessment was so terrible. I didn't want to do any. I was crying after that. I was 15 something.
Yeah.
In one of the most important electrical companies in the region where I grew up. And it was super theoretical. There was no practical. There was zero which goes into my world. So I needed to do, which may be funny to you, I needed to calculate in my brain in front of the CEO of the company, which was super intimidating. And I was already bad with it, even using my fingers at that time. But yeah. But let's not talk too much about me.
Hey, I think you're just as fascinating as I am, Jens. People will enjoy whatever they hear on this podcast.
Let's start with crime analyst and civilian support project manager.
Okay, yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, God, years ago, I was transitioning between careers. I was being a school teacher and I was moving over to the business world. And because the way sort of my jobs fell and when I was due to start one, I had like a 6-month gap. So I just took a random with the British Transport Police here in London. It was basically a temp job. So I got it through an agency. And my role was to support police officers in project managing crime. So when crimes came into the centre, they would allocate them to us as project managers, these civilian guys, and we'd oversee sort of 30, 40 cases at a time and would make sure all the evidence was collected, things progressed through the system. And it was super fascinating. Up until then, I knew nothing about how crime was managed and it was handled. So that was fascinating, thinking, it's just like any other piece of work. You've got a project manager, you've got to look at, but then you've got a really interesting subject and interesting people you're working with. I often tell people that my 6 months there is a bit like, imagine you worked in a sausage factory. You probably wouldn't eat sausages afterwards, right? When you actually see what goes into something that you previously thought was amazing, you're like, oh, that's actually maybe best not to explore too much. But yeah, absolutely fascinating 6 months. And I could probably talk for half an hour about that or longer, but that explains why I was there, Jens.
I was more imagining something like Sherlock Holmes. You wandering around and helping them to go deeper into the most interesting cases. That's how I imagined you, at least.
Yeah, do you know what was interesting? Because I'm going to apologize in advance to any project managers who watch your podcast or listen. I find project management incredibly dull. I was doing this and it wasn't really taxing me on a thinking level. So actually, in my spare time while I was there, I started to just pick up some more stuff. And one of the things I picked up that I was fascinated by was analyzing their crime data. So I said to them, look, has anyone ever looked into patterns of crime in this department and thing? And they said, no, that's not really of interest. We just want to solve the crimes. So I said, can I play around with the data? And I'm a mathematician and economist. So I just started breaking it down, running correlations, looking for statistical regressions. And I became absolutely fascinated. I wasn't really Sherlock Holmes, but I was giving them some insights. They was like, do you know that this type of crime tends to happen on a Tuesday more? And they're like, no, God, that's crazy. We never thought of that. And I'm not sure they actually used the work that I did in that 6 months to build a sort of prevention arm, but at least I was giving them the insights. And do you know what? That's something that I always look for in any business that I do is what is the data telling us? What can we really learn? And then how can we actually use it?
Yeah, maybe they used it for the movies at least.
Maybe, yeah. I'd like to hope so. It's best sometimes not to go back, but yeah, maybe. Maybe I should become a crime movie consultant now.
Why not? There are opportunities out there which you might never think of. So what else is interesting about you? So we definitely will go into blogging. I will not spoil it right now.
Okay.
I need to lead up to that.
Okay.
So how did you get to what you do today. Tell us a little bit from the crime analyst to what you're doing today.
Okay, well, so let me explain to your listeners what I'm doing today, and then we can take it back.
Yeah,
This could be like a movie. We'll do flashbacks and jump
let's do
forwards.
that.
But like any good storyteller will tell you, is you've got to lay out the situation, complication, question, answer. And so what I do today is I run my own consulting business, which is all about strategy through emotional intelligence. So me and my team, we work with companies to make them more effective, unlocking their strategies and getting people to buy into those strategies and teams working better together. Now, my journey to get here did involve some crime analyst and project management, but it all started as a school teacher. Actually, I was teaching high school maths and economics. I taught globally. I taught in different countries around the world, and then back in the UK. And then I made my transition into the business world. Fire being a bit of time at the police, and I ended up working for an energy company in their strategy team, where I absolutely loved strategy, and maybe that was building on the analytics piece that I loved. And from there, I entered strategy consulting. So 12 years spent being paid to be a big brain, solving complex problems. And Jens, what I discovered is people don't just want a big brain. 90% of the time, they paid no attention whatsoever to the strategies that me and the companies I worked for were developing. So they just became very expensive paperweights. That's when I had my eureka moment around how actually to really unlock strategy, you need the buy-in. You need to focus on the emotional intelligence side and then the focus side. And that's what I do today.
Yeah, so many things in that. Paper. Let's start with paper. So I've seen that working on the other side with consultants. Some consultants in this world are getting paid on the kilogram or whatever you have in the UK stones of paper they're producing. But
Yeah.
how do you link that to emotional intelligence? How did you get bringing these links together?
I'm just gonna pick up on your weight of paper. My very first day in consulting, I was told by a very senior person, I was the most junior person in the team. He said, I need you to print out all their annual reports, like for the last 10 years. And I said, but that's a lot of paper, right? What about the environment? He said, no, we need to carry a physical amount of paper to show that we really know a lot. And literally, and I was like, that's just crazy, right? But apparently that visual impact made the client think we were super clever. But anyway, how did I make the link? Yeah, I would sit in boardroom after, by the time I went through my 12 years career, I was operating at a very senior level, and I'd be in boardrooms up all around Europe as we presented our very expensive papers and watch the reaction. And you could see instantly whether people believed what you were saying and whether they bought into it. And most times they didn't, because they didn't understand. It was too complex. It wasn't, but they were too afraid to say anything. Or they loved the idea, but because the person proposing it they didn't like, because of politics, they were like, I'm never going to agree to this. Or they loved the idea, but you knew at the back of their head they were working on 78 other things, and they would never have the bandwidth to do it. And so you could just see it in their eyes, this look of fear, this look of, oh, this is like a great half hour, but I'm not going to do anything with it. And that just was really disheartening for me on their behalf, but also for myself. I just spent weeks of my life, months of my life developing whatever this was, only for it to be shot down for other reasons apart from the quality of the work.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah,
I challenge most people out there, if they really look at their work, how much of it is actually impactful. It's pretty scary, and you probably
yeah,
don't want to ask that question, but it's true.
especially the big five or four. I
Yeah.
see this. I think nothing against them. I was working in one of them as well, and it was an awesome education, but as well on learning what I don't want to do.
Hey, which is an important lesson. It's a very
I
important
agree,
lesson.
agree.
Yeah.
But for me, the interesting part is really because this companies, if we just take the big consulting companies, they get the chance to try to solve the most important problems in this world because they have just the opportunity to get into the big companies. Let's say I worked in IKEA. IKEA is working with the big ones. Why should they work with Jens or Faris? They should, I believe, especially Faris, not Jens. But it's always the thing when you go into a boardroom where it's like, hey, yeah, we have used, let's just name one of them. We have used McKinsey and they've worked out this strategy. So yeah, it's good. If someone else internally would came up with the same thing, maybe less paper, it wouldn't be as much worth.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Yeah, both sides are just as guilty of it. It's an easy risk of a approach, But what fascinates me about this is at the core of it is the very essence of how do you build trust, either as an individual or as an organization. And this is something I grapple with all the time, both for how to build my business, but also the work we do around emotional intelligence is basically getting people to increase their trust levels amongst each other. So it's absolutely fascinating and to me, and I don't want to be a big company, but it means as a small company, you have to use other levers apart from your brand and big things. And that's fine. But once you realize that, yeah, then it becomes a fascinating journey.
Yeah. Talking about trust, how do you help companies when you work with companies? And if we go back to you presenting the strategy,
Yeah.
what are you doing differently than what you have done in the beginning when you started doing that?
So the first thing is I would never build a strategy in isolation. Right? A strategy needs to be built by the people who are gonna you want to buy into it. It's the same reason I often say to people that it's why back in the day Apple used to put their iPads and iPhones in the stores about 10 degrees wonky, right? So that the first thing somebody does is touch it and correct it because that's what the human brain wants to do. And suddenly they feel like they've more connected with it. So you need to have a wonky strategy so that people go, oh, I can input into this, even if it's like adding one idea or just endorsing it. So I would never build anything in isolation. And what goes hand in hand with that is talk to people in their language. So gone are the days where I'll have a jargon-filled strategy. It's not only in the language, but also the style they want to talk to. So that's a big thing that I go into organizations and either do by getting to know the individuals or I teach leaders to do, which is flex your own style and accommodate them rather than expect them to accommodate you. So
Yeah.
these are two big aspects for strategy in my eyes.
One of the challenges I have seen, one part is presenting the strategy to an executive level. The next step is how do you get this into the organization so that's in the end executed or done and worked through inside of the organization. What I've seen, let's say, give you a bad example, the PowerPoint presentation that was printed out was basically shown through the rest of the organization in 5 hour long meetings, and then everyone should have gotten it. And 2 years later, everyone wonders, like, why is this strategy not implemented in our business?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's exactly a lot of clients say to me, "Oh, so is the output of your work a deck of slides or a strategy or page or a roadmap?" I said, "No, actually, if we never get that's fine because what it is, all 10 of you who are the leaders, all knowing the strategy by heart, all walking out of this room excited, enthusiastic, and speaking about it in the same language." And I said, "That doesn't just happen by me showing you 30 slides." That,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't surprise me that story you said.
But that would mean you need to do that differently than, okay, I'm interviewing 5 people, then I go back into my room and I will write 20 slides of PowerPoints or 200 more, most probably. What are you doing differently with the leadership?
You do that thinking in front of them, you get them to hold the pen. So nowadays, the tools, why should I be the one? When you control a flip chart as a facilitator, it's a very powerful thing because you are actually translating people's ideas and words and writing it in your own language. Nowadays, we've got digital tools. They can all fill in the whiteboard at the same time. And all I'm doing is tidying it up and maybe putting it into a nicer order. So they can see their own words there. And I make it very interactive, right? I get them to actually say things back. Create an environment so we hear everyone's views. I play games just like I used to with the children, right? How do you reinforce something? Learning is about actually using the knowledge you have to do something with it. So why not take a strategy and make a game of bingo, right? This is just an idea.
Yeah.
So get people in, standing up, sitting down, filling in a card when they hear the key parts of the strategy. That's going to really enforce it in their head. And I'm not saying you do that all the time and you don't take some bits seriously, but how do you get them excited and really understand it and eat, sleep, and breathe it? Is bring it to life rather than take it away and come back with slides.
Yeah, and specifically, if they don't do that, it's not going to happen afterwards because you feel it straight away if a person believing in it and want to do it rather than a person that is just taking a PowerPoint from someone else and trying to explain it. You see it all the time. At least I have seen it.
Yeah. I was talking to a CEO last week about possibly helping him with his change program that he'd just launched around his business. And he said to me, we're having real struggle getting people around the business to really get excited by this. I said, okay, explain to me why you're doing the program. And he talked nonstop for 10 minutes without taking a breath. He never once smiled. He often had to refer to his piece of paper. And I just stopped him after 10 minutes and said, oh my God, I am so bored. right? I hate to tell you this,
Did you
but your
did you
change.
literally say that?
Yeah, I did. I said, I am so bored, and you don't look happy about the change. So I don't feel happy about the change. I don't even work for you. So I said, I can see where you need help, or at least one place you need help. And he was like, he actually said, are you not meant to be pitching for my work? And I said, I'm just being honest, my friend. And this is the kind of stuff I do. So
Awesome.
if we are going to work together, this is the kind of stuff I'll work on with you. And he said, I've subsequently won the work, but that doesn't always work. I'm here to tell your listeners. But that is the kind of stuff that is very impactful.
And I love that because in the end, the story of what, if we take the CEO, if this person can't get this message into themselves so that they truly believe it and burn for it, it's not going to work. You can have the best PowerPoint or the best speech writer. If you're not believing it, it's not going to happen.
Completely.
Yeah. And it's the fun part is if you would have been internal saying the same thing, he would kick you out of the room.
Oh, completely. Yeah, completely. And that's the strange thing. Yeah, sometimes it's who says what. It's absolutely crazy to me, Jens. And my dad finds it amazing that I have a couple of clients that pay me to just sit in meetings and call out biases or bullshit or just challenge them. And he said, I can't believe grown adults pay you to say things like that to them. And I said, well, yeah, there is definitely a need for that because you believe your own hype. You create, particularly if you're very senior, people are afraid to challenge you within your own organization.
Yeah.
But I just wish more companies, not just from a business point of view for me, but more companies were open to that sort of thing.
Yeah. So how does it work? You're sitting around the table with the executives and you have a bell and you ring the bell every time we're on.
Yeah, not quite a bell, but I say, look, hang on a minute. I say something like, hey, what's just happened just now? Are you making a decision based on facts? So I will usually present it in a question. Whose opinion are we listening to right now? Have we asked everyone's opinion on this topic? Because it's amazing how much groupthink and follow the leader takes place in a room, even with very senior individuals.
Yeah. Oh, and then going back to the political thing, this is
Mm.
incredible in these meetings. I've had the pleasure to be in some of them as member and as well facilitator. That's incredible.
Yeah, and do you know what's scary, Jens, is I know I do it myself when I'm in meetings. I wish
Of
I had a
course.
me to say it. It's very hard to, as I often say, a hummus can't read its own label, or whatever your favorite food is, it can't read its own label. So you need somebody external to read your label for you.
Yeah, because specifically because you are so experienced in these things, you can use it to your advantage as well, for good and
Mm.
bad. And if you
Yeah, you
want
got it.
to influence someone in your organization to get towards the direction,
That's true. That's true. But, yeah,
we're just
um,
human.
we are just human.
So let's go deeper into emotional intelligence. So we
Yeah.
talked now a little bit more about strategy and we are scratching the surface when it comes to emotional intelligence. Maybe for those who have never heard about this word, I know there's still people who are thinking that IQ is the most important thing in the world. What do you think about that to get
Well,
started?
I think being successful is about three components, Jens, and you need all three. You do need IQ, you need great ideas. And I'm not talking about IQ in the classical, like a high Mensa score. You just need great ideas and lots of them. You then need EQ, which is the ability to get others to buy into your ideas and take them on the journey. And then you need FQ, which is something which stands for focus. And people who are desperately Googling that, don't worry, it's something I invented as a phrase. But it is about the ability to focus and deliver on your ideas. Okay, too many of us get distracted, both at an individual level and at a company level, to really see the fruits of all our great ideas and get success that way.
Yeah, so important. I need to double down on that one.
Okay.
Let's
Well,
talk
hang on a
about
minute. Hang on a minute.
emotional intelligence
Yeah,
comes
let's
later.
talk about emotional intelligence first. Don't lose your FQ on EQ before we get onto FQ. Yeah.
I have to follow my enthusiasm. That's a good thing. I'm the moderator.
Sorry. Okay.
as,
I'll be
as long
quiet.
as you shut up in between. So, focus.
Mm.
This is a big topic. I see
Mm.
from small to big, from an individual, like you said, to an organizational level, that organizations have different perspectives and no focus. They're
Mm.
just reacting depending on what's happening outside, competition, market dynamics, whatever. And then they figure out after a couple of years or sometimes earlier that things are not working. So focus, and the same on an individual level. Looking at younger people, we are struggling right now, in my experience over the last year, with people who have been 2 years locked down into our rooms into our houses, and then the focus is distracted in different ways. And then you bring them now back into the working environment or physical working environment where some people are still thinking that I need to watch over your shoulder all day long to see that you're working, that you're doing your job. So long winding setup for the topic. I'm really interested. How do you get organizations to focus?
So the biggest thing to do for an organization for them to be focused. So you talked about the split between reactive and proactive, and yeah, far too many of us are reactive. But they always say it should be about an 80-20%, 80% reactive, 20% strategic and forward planning. And a good way to be strategic is be really clear what you want to achieve and what's going to get you there. So make sure you're working on those things, but don't work on too many things. So many times, I'd say 99% of the companies I go into are doing too many strategic projects. I often say to them, how can 178 things be strategic? You wouldn't try and do this many things in your personal life all at the same time. So why do you think your organization can? And they just look at me blindly. We're a big organization. I'm like, it's far better to slim that down and do them really well. So that's the number one thing. Be really clear and prioritize. And so take stuff away from your employees and be really clear. Say, these are the 3 things we need you to work on. And don't stop talking about them. So that really helps organizations, but that's really hard. And people really struggle with doing that. That's okay, because again, having someone external can really help you with that, because they're not emotionally invested in each of those projects. They can see them for what they are. So that's probably the biggest areas that organizations can help with focus. And then at a secondary level is look at the things that are stopping your employees or your teams from actually achieving what you need them to achieve or working on what they need to achieve. And it can be obvious stuff that people never address. I'll take a classic one. Think in an office environment, Jens. How many times, imagine you have a printer that keeps breaking, and let's say it's an office full of lawyers and they're always printing out papers. And at least once a day, somebody has to take it apart, fix it, slap it, call IT. I would say to a company, if you were to step back and add up all the hours lost to that on all the important projects you want, just buy a new printer. Remove the focus drain, as I call it, early on to get people back to what is really important and why actually they add value, or hire an IT guy or whatever. So it's stuff like that. And there can be macros. So many of these things, you don't have enough licenses for people to use the software. You haven't taught them how to use it. All these things that chip away from people's days and focusing on what you really want them to focus on, and instead distracted elsewhere.
Yeah, so important. Though it sounds so easy, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's the old SAS motto. Difficult we do immediately, impossible just takes a little bit longer. Yeah, but you've got to be up for it. That's part of the fun.
Yeah, and I think looping that back to emotional intelligence, that takes the requirement for leaders to be emotionally intelligent, to understand what's going on in the organization. So how do you work with the leaders on... Do you work with the leaders on emotional intelligence? Do you tell them what it is about, or how do you do that to bring that in?
I do. So I'm not a coach, but I do end up coaching. But I'd rather work with teams on strategic problems. That's what I'm here to do. But invariably, when I do that, I end up working with individuals, either because they suddenly, a lot of leaders aren't self-aware. A very common conversation for me, Jens, is I'll have a leader ring me up saying, we've got this strategic problem. And they'll say to me, between you and me, the problem is with the team. Right. And I'm always like, oh, yeah, it's a good start. And you go in and you watch them and you're like, oh, okay. Everyone in the team says, no, the problem is that person there,
of course,
right at the top. I've got a client just like that at the moment. And the leader cannot see that his style is terrible for his team. So how do I do stuff there is we've got to raise the level of self-awareness. And the 2 techniques that I use a lot are, one is bruising somebody's ego. Okay. If you bruise somebody's ego, they're more, as long as you do it in the right way and not annoy them, they're more likely to listen to you, or they're more likely to pay. And a good way to do that is to get their peers to share feedback about an environment. Yeah, because so many times people will say to me, yeah, you're an expert in this. I'm not sure, or I don't know you, so I'm not going to trust your opinion. But if they're hearing a peer say, well, that's terrible, and I wouldn't do it like that, then they're more likely to open up. That's the same with bruising their ego. If they realize they could be better, then they might be open to listening more to you. But not everyone is self-aware and not everyone has that level. So sometimes I have to change processes around leaders to get them to change, because they still need to change, right? and that can be equally fun, equally challenging. But yeah, I do work to get them to listen more, get them to flex their style, get them to engage with their teams. Go and walk the floors more. Go and listen to what's actually happening in your organization, and these invariably make them better leaders.
Yeah. Do you then work in the same way with the team? So one part is with the leader on a one-on-one. Do you work with the team members in the same way?
I do, yeah. And again, it depends what the specific challenge or the strategic problem we're trying to unlock and how much time the company wants to invest. It's always fascinating. Everyone wants everything done in half a day. I can give you half a day, they say. And I'll be like, when have you ever changed people's behaviors in half a day? But I can at least make them more self-aware that they have problems in half a day.
Yeah, and then in my experience, the challenge with these things is it's not just one team and one leader. In the bigger organization, you have different leaders and different teams, and that's a melting pot of cultural politics, everything in one piece. And one, let's say, one bad leader, if we call it bad leader, can influence the totality to be a mess.
Yeah, and not just the leader, right? One team member can
Yeah,
change the dynamic. Teams hate it when I say, look, don't get too confident. Even with a well-drilled team, all it takes is a change of a team member, either somebody leaving, somebody new joining, or a new goal, or a change in a deadline, and you almost go back to the start, right? You go
yeah.
back to the start of the forming, storming, norming curve. And what great leaders are good at is constantly being able to accelerate through that curve to peak performance. So yeah.
So such an important leadership skill as well to see that on an ongoing basis and then turn the clock back
Hmm.
to, okay, we're right now here. I see where we are, self-awareness. Let's move us. And being
Yeah.
transparent about that is half, at least in my experience, half the way is done if you're transparent about that and call things out. Hey guys, we just moved back here.
Yeah.
Let's get
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, I'll often ask a team when I meet them for the first time, I'll say, when was the last time you all had a proper argument? And I'm always worried when they say never. Never.
Oh,
Uh,
like in marriage.
like in marriage, yeah, exactly. It is. It's like any relationship. And equally, if they say we have them all the time, I'm like, oh, okay, we need both those are not necessarily great places to be.
Yeah. Looping us to you as a person, going a little bit away from the business, but still linking it.
Yeah,
Blogging.
blogging, yes.
Your mom. Oh my God. Now you're unemployed. You're unmarried. What else? Oh, I need to scroll the screen. Sorry. Oh my God. You're unemployed. You're unmarried, and you don't own a house. What
Yes.
will I tell people? Tell us more
Yeah.
about that story.
So that story, it was when that story specifically was when I decided to leave my well-paid consulting job and start out on my own. I announced it with grand fanfare over a dinner with my parents, and one of my sisters was there. And I thought, I looked across to my parents. My mum went very quiet during the rest of the meal, whereas my dad was quite happy because he used to run his own company, so he was quite excited for me. So when I spoke to my mum after dinner and said, "Mum, what's wrong? You've gone very quiet." That's what she said to me. "Oh my God, I'm worried about you, son, because you have no job, you have no wife, and you have no house." Which suddenly struck, obviously, every part of me wanted to scream and say, "Oh, that's not how I see it." But this goes back to the emotional intelligence. Those are the important things for my mum. And that's her definitions of success, rightly or wrongly. So it was about helping her navigate through those and see that her son wasn't a failure and that there's more to life. But yes, that was her initial reaction, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, 3 years later, she's a little more proud of me. But no, I jest. Of course she is. But yeah, that was her initial reaction.
I'm pretty sure I've seen a photo of, I think it's your parents and yourself in a train station.
You have, funnily enough, earlier this year, Jens, I happened to be in a billboard advert here in the UK. As a small business owner, my insurance company decided to have me as their billboard star and promote my business. And my mum and dad, my mum in particular, has never been more proud than watching as we went on a billboard hunt around London to look for my face on giant posters. So there you go. I reminded her of the conversation, and I'm very grateful to my mother for her support and for allowing me to blog about what she said to me in confidence and share it with people because I thought it was so entertaining.
It's small. It's not small, but it's fairly simple.
Yeah.
Just get on the billboard. You can buy it. Worst case.
Yeah, I'm here to tell your listeners if people have lost faith in you, just it goes back to your trust and how just get yourself on a billboard or do other things. Have you been on a billboard, Jens?
No, not that I know at least.
Have you been on TV?
Yes, but long time ago. Long time ago.
Is it something you like to talk about?
Now we turn the table. No, it was so I was playing trumpet for plus 30 years,
Okay.
and I was playing in a band, and through that I was in television. So nothing business related, unfortunately.
Okay.
But
Never say never. You're a young man. There's plenty of time ahead of you.
true, I'm on my own TV. That's why I do my own show. So nobody cannot invite me.
That's it. Yeah. You're like Rupert Murdoch. Just own the network. That way you can always be on it.
That's how it works.
Or Trump with Truth Social. That's why he created it. I don't know how many people are on Truth Social, but
Yeah, I've never even seen it or downloaded it. Not
no,
mine.
I'm going to suspect that the Venn diagram of your listeners and Trump supporters probably doesn't have a big overlap, but I may be wrong.
I don't know. I have never asked.
We'll
Yeah,
put a poll in the comments. We won't. It's not my podcast. I can say whatever. Right? Yeah.
yeah, you're
Jens,
welcome.
Jens will send you each 50 euros. I can make these claims and they'll never come true. But you'll hold Jens accountable, so that's great.
I just lost all the 2 listeners I have. Now, let's dig a little bit into blogging, because one interesting thing for me is you as an entrepreneur documenting a bit of what you're doing, but as well doing random topics. It's not all your business topics. At least what I've seen when I read through is that this has nothing to do with your business, but maybe it does. I don't know. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit how you deal with your blog.
How I approach it. It goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about trust. How do you build trust? How do you build connection? So I am not a big five. I'm not a big organization. I don't have a big brand, even though I've been on a billboard. When I stepped back and thought, how am I building that trust with people who've never heard of me? And have you heard of the trust equation, Jens?
Not sure. I guess
Not
I
sh-
have.
You
But
probably have, but scientists a while back tried to break down what builds trust, and they basically distilled it into 3 components. Okay, it is your authenticity. Do people like you? It's your credibility. Do they believe what you're saying? And it's your reliability. Do you time and time again do what you say you'll do? Now that's where the for the big organizations, they pay their big brands is equivalent to their reliability and a bit of their credibility. They throw money, they have big posters, people have heard of them, so they assume they're reliable and credible. Now, as an entrepreneur, as a small business, you don't have, especially if nobody's ever heard of you, you don't have reliability. They've never heard of you unless somebody has recommended you, which is
yeah,
great. Get a referral, get a testimonial. And so, how do you come across as credible? They'll have to start talking to you. So your blogs. When I thought about this in blogs, I can write blogs that are very technical and talk about emotional intelligence and everything. But the other aspect that every one of us has that is unique to us is our authenticity. So why not unleash your authenticity? People, I find by a bit of trial and error that people are fascinated by the journey I'm going on. So why not share it? That's what makes me authentic.
yeah,
And yeah, so you're absolutely right, Jens. I write blogs about going to the gym. I write blogs about having a nosebleed. That and nothing business related. But do you know what? I turn up to business meetings. I went to one this week, and at the start of the meeting, the client said, "Did you do your exercise today, Faris?" And I went, "No, not yet." And she goes, "You better, because you blogged about it last week about how you're trying to do every day in the month." And I went, "Oh yeah." And do you know what? That was great because she and the team are invested in me, and that's a large part of business. So yeah, if anyone of your listeners does follow my blogs, I write once a week. They will get to hear lots of random aspects of my life, and hopefully it's entertaining. If not, let me know. But yeah, that's my approach to blogging.
it is definitely entertaining. I've not heard about it before, but now I'm going to read it more often. I, of
Okay.
course, read a couple of them.
Yeah.
Of course, the one with the where you talked about being on 50 podcasts in a year and
Yes.
these things. Yeah, very interesting topics, by the way, for podcasters. So if anyone is a podcaster, you should go to that blog, and I will put it into the show notes. I will not spoil it right now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I encourage people that find whatever works for you. Find whatever channels your authenticity. It doesn't have to be blogs. All right. But whatever you don't be afraid to show yourself. And nobody can ever replicate you. There's 8 billion of us on the planet, but nobody has your connections, has your way of doing things. So just unleash it.
Yeah, and it's People follow people. People are interested in people. Yes, we love brands if we take Nike or whatever, but you're more interested even in the person who has founded Nike.
Yeah.
That's maybe not that famous for the every person out there, but if you would know, hey, this is the person who has founded Nike, everyone was like, whoop, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah, there'll probably be someone out there who is so fascinated by you they create a Wikipedia entry, Jens, and they
I
update
hope
it with.
not.
No, that's probably the extreme, but yeah, it's amazing what people are interested in. I was telling a story last night or the day before about when I was a bit younger. I was running an interview in a consulting company, and the interviewee turned up, and I one of the first things I say in an interview when I'm running interviews is, let me just tell you a bit about me so you understand who's sitting on the other side of the table and make me a bit more human. This young lady sat opposite me and looked me in the face and said, don't worry, I know all about you. I've Googled you. And she then reached into her bag and took out 6 pages of A4 and started reading me to me, which was one of the weirdest situations I've had in an interview for a while.
That's really weird.
It was weird. It was a bit weird. I
Did
mean,
you
I don't
hire
mind
her?
people. No, she was. It was
Oh,
an
I know.
indication of her. She was a very aggressive young lady. I remember asking her questions such as, "Tell me about a time that you worked with a team that was dysfunctional." And she said, I've never worked in a team that's dysfunctional because if it's ever dysfunctional, I crush all the dysfunctional members. So just her response to every question was super aggressive. And I was like, I don't think you really fit into our culture here,
Yeah,
which
that's a
maybe I could
different
have
one.
guessed from the Google printouts.
That's in my experience, it's the first 5 seconds, and you know it's going to work or not. I
Uh,
do this a lot, like we did as well. The pre-podcast chat, I did one today, which was fascinating.
oh, yeah.
We looked at each other. We didn't say hi yet, and I was knowing it's going to work.
Interesting. And can you work out in your head what were the telltale signs?
No, I have no idea. Of course, I read about the people and I check their videos before I jump on to a call, so I have a feeling already. But no, no idea. Spider
So that
senses.
Spider said there's a body of research that shows that you get just in an interview you get just as much information from the first question as you do from 20 questions.
Yeah.
I watched this TV show once. It did an experiment with this where they had 10 people turn up for an interview and they told them it would be an hour long interview. And when they walked into the room, they asked them one question, which was, how was your journey to the interview today? And the person answered it. And then they said, sorry, we've got no more time for the interview, and left. And they from that one question, it was fascinating watching because everyone answered it differently. Some people answered it, just said, oh, yeah, it was okay. And other people told a story and said, well, actually, I got the train this morning and the train was delayed and then this happened. And everyone treated it differently. And you could really learn because the rest of the show, you learn about their personalities, who would be successful just from that one question. And it really always fascinated me that. And I think you shared it with your podcast interview.
Yeah. Who was successful in that example?
It
I'm
depends. It
eager
depends
to
what
learn.
role. It depends what role you're going for. So
Okay.
obviously, if it's a salesperson, you want someone who's good at telling a story. If it was
Yeah.
an engineering role, you wanted someone who was very all over the detail. So yeah, it just really depends on what role you're asked for.
Yeah, I just published a podcast episode which very cool in storytelling. But that's also a little bit an American trait in my experience. The American guests I have on, they're just better than that. I can only compare it to me as a German storyteller.
Yeah, it's all about culture and confidence because the American mindset is very fascinating. Again, you'll see a common theme here. I read a lot of articles, right? So I spend at least an hour a day reading, and then I get fascinated. Mostly it's around business, psychology, emotional intelligence. So I once read an article about a group of British salespeople who were okay at that job, had a performance level like this, and this sales trainer got them all to put on an American accent and do their job, exactly the same job, follow the same script. So don't change your words, just change your accent and go out and sell. And as a team, they sold 20% more
Wow.
after this experiment. And I was like, because the whole concept was British people imagine Americans as more confident. So just by putting on a more confident mindset, even if you're role playing it, they sold more. So I read this and I was like, that's a load of, can I say bullshit
Yeah,
on your
of
podcast?
course.
I say that's bullshit, but I'm going to try it with the next team I work with. So, do you know what? It worked. So I often with teams, not just American actors, I'll say put on a persona in your head of the most confident person you've ever met, or the most technical person you've ever met, and let's have the same conversation. Because often I bring in actors and put people in situations they find difficult as a way to help them with their emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And I'd say eight times out of 10, it works. Just that flick of a switch of just imagine you're somebody else. Yeah, you just talking about Americans triggered that story for me. But there's a lot to be learned. What switch can you flick in your own brain to get something, unlock something that's holding you back?
You can do so much just with the mindset and your brain, with going back to your formula, focus on the right things. One example, me being a sports person, at least 2 years ago. No, I finished full Ironman triathlon 2 years ago, the last one at least. It's a lot of people think it's extremely physical, and yes, it is, but it's less physical. I would say it's 40% physical and 60% mindset, because you could finish that without knowing what you are into sports, except that you do every day. You could finish that if you train for it a year, at 2 years, you can do that. It's more the mindset which then gets you to a direction how good you will be with it. But finishing, like running a marathon, you can do that tomorrow. Will take you maybe 8 hours, but you can.
And actually running 8 hours is harder than running 3 hours.
Agree.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research that shows endurance sports, there's a high correlation between that and successful business people, just because of the mental toughness and the ability.
Yeah,
And I often joke that a lot of my mental toughness comes from my teenage years of playing Mario Kart for 8 hours straight and just being able to sit there, even with my mum shouting, "Get off the computer. Now come and do your homework." But thanks, Mario.
That's awesome. But it's something you can train, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not that difficult. It's more doing it every day and getting you into situations that are uncomfortable. And then in sports, it's called the perceived effort. You're getting used to it, and then what was hard yesterday is today not hard anymore. You can push to the next level. And that's with everything the same in business, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I agree. That's why, I don't know about you, but that's why I personally like pushing my comfort zone across lots of dimensions regularly. I set myself monthly challenges. I do stupid things just to keep my brain and my own comfort levels on edge.
What is the most stupid challenge you did?
Oh, I try and make them fun, but I've done things like I'm only going to use my left hand. I'm right-handed for the next week. Just yeah, why not force myself? And actually, as a result of that, I use my mouse left-handed so that I can type at the same time. So it did increase my productivity. But yeah, I gave up trying to write everything left-handed because that was really quite slow. But again, it was once you go back to the old way, you're like, oh, this is so much better. So yeah, you are only limited by your imagination, is what I tell people. Your creativity. So you can set yourself, and it don't have to be as ridiculous as it could be to do an hour study of a language a week, or pick up a new hobby or something, whatever. But it's always good to add a little bit of a challenge or a mix into your day-to-day life.
Yeah, I love that too. I'm right now in a push-up challenge, which is terrible because I'm so terrible in it.
Oh yeah.
But we'll get through it.
Okay, you get through it. How long have you got left on the challenge?
Oh, yeah, that's a longer one. So my long-term perspective is I want to be able to do 100 push-ups when I'm 80.
Okay.
I'm now 42 and I can't do 100.
Okay. It's perceived effort. You just need to build up.
Exactly. Yeah, but there's perceived strength missing as well. But yeah, get there. No, but I did one fun one, which was the video challenge, which I tried 365 days, a video vlog. That was tough.
Okay.
Which nobody remembers anymore. That's the fun stuff. It's already 2.5 years ago.
Was it? Okay, it was 2.5 years ago. Funnily enough, I did a press up challenge 2 years ago, which was 25 press ups a day for 25 days.
Which
is nothing. It's okay. But me being me, I was like, that's just boring, right? So each day I had to do press ups in a different way.
Ooh.
So over the 25 days, and actually I put them all on YouTube, and over the 25 days, what did I do? I did handstand press ups. I did press ups in fancy dress. I did press ups on the top of a car. I did press ups while drawing. I did press ups on an ironing board. So for me, it was as much a mental challenge as it was a physical challenge.
Yeah, I love that. There comes the innovator.
I'm just lobbing it into your mix. That might make the 100 easier if you.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I could get even 100 in within the next 100 days. But yeah, I'm working on
Right.
that. I will tell you in the future.
Okay.
Awesome. Let's get into the last part of the podcast where I ask a couple of random questions
Okay.
that I do to every guest. Not that I
Yeah.
haven't used any random question until now. If you could work with a project that is impacting every human being on Earth, what project would you choose to work with and why?
I just extrapolate what I do, right? So I'd really focus on emotional intelligence. I genuinely think if we had more people connecting with more people who they don't know, the world would be a better place. So I would work on a project that was a random conversation generator that at least once a year everybody in the world had to take part in, to meet one of the other 8 billion people they've never met and hear about their life.
This is cool.
Yeah.
You, it might sound funny, but imagine what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And we have never met since a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, look how amazing this is, right? There are lots of great tools out there. And actually, this is something implanted in companies, but there's a lot of great apps out there that is about random networking, which might sound, people are probably listening to go, that sounds crazy and scary, but actually is so great. For half an hour of your time, you get to meet someone fascinating around the world and you can talk about whatever you like. And usually there is more than enough topics. They give you starters of conversations. And I've been doing one of those apps for 2 years now, and my life is definitely so much richer because of it.
Would you share which app you're using?
Yeah, the app I use is called Lunch Club. So Lunch Club pairs you, and the beauty is you put in which topics you're interested in, when you're available, and it auto matches you. So you don't have to go back and forth of are you free at this time. So it could be that you and I both put in podcasts, we're both free on a Monday night, and it automatically says you two get together for half an hour and just have a chat.
Cool. Yeah, we'll check it out. Definitely
Yeah.
interesting. What advice would you give to a young innovator that's just getting started?
Again, linked to what we've talked about, if you're a young innovator, talk to more people, ask more questions, right? Really sharpen your message, because that's just as powerful as the innovation you come up with. How you talk about it, how excited. Think back to what we talked about earlier about that CEO. If you can transmit your energy and you can explain it simply, you're going to go a lot further with your ideas than if you invest more time making it a better idea.
Yeah.
So,
very cool.
Yeah.
Faris, last question.
Yes.
How can people find you, or where can people find you, and how can people reach out to you?
If they just close their eyes and dream. No.
That's the next level.
That's the next level. That's for the Zen people listening to the bonus extra edition. But hey, 2 great places you can find me. One is on my company website. My company is called Shiageto, which is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone, and it's spelled Shiageto. So shiageto.com. I'm sure Jens will put it in the links there. And the other great place is I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. That's where I put my blogs, my vlogs, my podcasts, and just daily musings. So you get the added bonus of finding me, but you can also read about all those weird things that I write about.
Yeah, and if you connect on LinkedIn, there's always something fun coming your way.
There is a treat. There is a treat.
I'm not going to spoil it. Faris, thank you very much for spending the time with me. It was an awesome evening and it was fun having you on the show.
Likewise, Jens, I've had bad toothache all day, but actually I've forgotten about it totally for the last hour we've been talking. So thank you very much for that and for inviting me on your podcast.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.